So today we're talking Speedlite and the fundamental basics of achieving the best results from that simple little flash gun that can fit on top of the camera or can actually go onto a third-party stand. The Speedlite is a really powerful little tool if it's reused right. However, it can be overused in the wrong places and basically just result with boring, if not overfilled, flash-style images. So hoping to explore in this session quickly how you can change your Speedlite photography. So even though we're seeing it here on the camera hot shoe mount, obviously you're aware that we can put it onto a stand and obviously it needs to be triggered in some way. When it's on top of the hot shoe, it's usually triggered from the camera itself, and obviously the functionality of whether the Speedlite is going to be used in a manual way or in a TTL way. We're not talking about that in this film, but I would always try and encourage you to master the manual as well as the TTL options. So when you first put your Speedlite on top of the camera, most of you are going to actually just stick it on just as we are now, and basically you're going to take a photograph, you're going to put it in TTL mode, and basically it's going to try and equal out the contrast within the scene, and so hence you're going to either overfill on a dark day or you're going to underfill on a very sunny day. So basically taking control of the TTL will help you do that, and obviously in the manual option as well. So what can we do with the Speedlite instead of just actually using it direct at the subject, and why should we be using it in different ways? So let's talk in the positive of direct to subject as we're seeing here. So this would be great for me if I'm photographing a group and they're a long distance away. I don't want any diffusion on the front of the little Speedlite. Why? Because we need the flash to actually travel as far away as we can. Remember, on the Speedlite itself, it also has an automatic zoom that as you zoom in and out with a zoom lens, it will actually try and equal the focal length of the lens to its maximum point. However, we can also set it in a manual way, and you should check out some of the other films we've done on that. So this is great if you're looking to shoot a group of say 10 people and basically you're trying to actually give some illumination across the group, especially when they're being lit from the sun behind them, so actually creating some equal in the contrast within the scene. When we then start to look at its positioning, we start to think about how we can maximize the Speedlite for best effect. So the first thing is the little accessories that the speed gun has got in itself already. One is the little diffuser cap that you can just see kind of pulls out. When you pull this diffuser out, it also pulls out the little bounce light card called the catch light card, and that will actually change its characteristics as well. And we're going to be looking at these during the session. So when we're direct onto camera, pretty much we're going to just get an explosion of the Xenon gas. It's going to spark itself out and it's going to illuminate the scene. But obviously what we want to do is not illuminate, we want to start to learn how to light. So when we drop down this little diffuser without the bounce light card out, basically what it's going to do, obviously it's going to diffuse the light. It's really designed for wide angle lenses rather than anything else. So if you're using a wide angle lens and you want to actually illuminate the group, and then possibly you're going to need to actually pop this out. However, this can also be a good standardized diffuser to the flash when you're using it a general way. But obviously if you're trying to light a group a long way away, diffusing the flash is going to make the light diffuse more, hence less power when it travels. It might not reach the group, so this little Speedlite might not have enough intensity to get to what it's trying to lit. So in other words, we can use this as our first point of diffusion. The next point will be in some flash guns, they come with these little caps, these diffusion caps, and I'd recommend that if you're going to be using a very soft light directly onto the subject, then probably you're using this instead of the diffuser. Don't, as far as the wide angle diffuser that comes out. If you use the two together, obviously it's got double layers of diffusion, and that is going to help you then basically create a softer light source again. So the cap is good when it's directly onto the subject, whether it's trying to light them, trying to light a wall, or trying to light an object. The first skill set I try and encourage you to do with the Speedlite is learn when to bounce the light. And it doesn't always have to be off another surface. It can actually be from its own catchlight card, or a third-party adapter that we can put on, even a homemade one. But as far as the angle, when you're looking to buy a Speedlite, I would definitely encourage you to kind of go up a gear to make sure that you're not just buying a Speedlite with a fixed head. So in other words, it can't rotate in any way. At least by buying a Speedlite with a rotational head, you get to actually control the direction to the light in some way. So when you start to actually just go through the different points of the angularity of the Speedlite, you're going to find that it still will light some of the subject in front of you. However, it's going to start to actually throw a little bit of a shadow. In fact, it's not a shadow. It's basically where the subject is just not lit because the light is feathering off too much. So just the understanding of the basics will allow you to walk into a scene and go, right, I need to know this now. So in other words, I might be looking to bounce off a ceiling here to make the flash even bigger, to give some illumination to the whole room set rather than just give illumination to the group themselves. So once we start to accept that, then we can start to think about, well, can I use the diffuser cap, and could I use the wide angle diffuser? In fact, when you're tilting, I would recommend that you don't use the wide angle diffuser, that you just use in either the actual raw flash, as it were, or you're using the diffuser cap. The diffuser cap will basically allow the light to feather more and spill a little bit onto the lower part of the subjects. So in other words, if we're using the Speedlite in this way, and say we were shooting a group of 4 or 5 people in a 3/4 length, you would actually put some of the light onto the ceiling, some of the light onto the faces, and then it would feather onto the lower parts of the body. So it would look like a slight shadowing on the bodies, but you will be able to actually create some illumination without any trouble. Of course, if you're really looking to actually bounce light onto the group of the same size close up, then I'd recommend that you're using the wide angle diffuser as the kind of the pull out, and then this little catchlight card which will bounce some of the light directly in towards the faces, as well as actually add a catchlight within the eye itself. That's a very a good starting method for you if you're illuminating groups. So just pull out both the card and the diffuser together. Do it to a basics of no more than a 45-degree tilt, and you're going to get a very acceptable image. But remember, pretty much anything above a 4 or 5 grouping, you're probably going to have to tilt it down to actually use as a direct light source. So when you start to actually tilt the Speedlite even further, in this case with the wide angle diffuser and the catchlight card out, all this will really do is add a very basic fill into the faces of the subject. All or most of the illumination is being angled up towards a ceiling, and obviously if you're photographing outside, there's nothing for it to bounce off. So the only light that is really going to appear is a little bit of the illumination coming off the bounce card, but is guaranteed to put a small catchlight in the eyes to actually bring the eyes alive. Once you start to actually tilt the flash gun to the full upright position, basically then all it's going to be doing is lighting above, directional up, and obviously if you're using things like the zoom control to actually narrow the beam even more in a manual way on the back of the Speedlite, you'll be able to actually control small pockets of light. Now, as the flash gun is here, basically I wouldn't recommend that you use any of the diffusion on the front of the flash gun. Why? Because basically it's going to bounce up, it's going to physically hit a ceiling or a reflector, and that is where the flash is going to grow. Remember, anytime we're adding a diffuser or bouncing the flash off a surface, what we're actually trying to make it do is diffuse and increase its physical size. And by diffusing the harsh light, obviously it becomes a softer light, and by obviously creating a bigger light source, that creates a softness as well. So whether we're bouncing it off a ceiling or a wall. So the vertical position should only be used when you're looking to actually have a very soft illumination across the whole group, but remember, it won't add any light into the faces of the subject unless above it you've actually put a small reflector. The diffuser cap in this position pretty much will not do the same thing as a reflector, so you're wasting your time, you're just losing the energy of the Speedlite, so I'd recommend you take off the actual cover before bouncing it onto the ceiling above. The catchlight card can be used and it will push in just a little bit of light in towards the faces, but when it's in the true vertical position, it really isn't going to actually have a lot of light kind of falling onto the faces. So once more, all it's really going to do is add that subtle kind of light just in with the pupil of the eye itself. The other thing is when we turn the flash gun from a straight kind of 12 o'clock or a 6 o'clock position, depends how you want to talk about it, so in the direction of the lens. Once we start to talk it to the 9 o'clock position, which would be obviously to the left of the lens, or to the 3 o'clock position where we turn it, that would be to the right hand of the lens. Obviously then we're going to be bouncing it off a surface because it's not going to be used in anything else really. So look for white reflected walls, or if you're looking for some coloured light, a coloured wall will do the same thing. But also if you're looking for the likes of mirrors in a room, that will really actually allow you to create quite spectacular images when you actually master the art of the speedlight in reflectancy. So remember that when the light is turned to either the 9 o'clock position or the 3 o'clock position, you still have the options to the tilts, which will give you a change in the direction to the light. But remember, as you tilt the light up in its angle of reflectancy, it's going to go in a different direction. Perhaps you actually realize, so you're going to add some shadow onto your the subjects. So remember that the speedlight itself will not only point directly at the subject, it will point up, and it will also point to the left and to the right to maximize the variety and the illumination of the speedlight itself.